Recently, Genshin finally teased a certain character by the name of Zibai, a Geo character from Liyue that also held a Geo Moonwheel. If you watched my last video, I mentioned this particular character already, and if you own Zhongli, he actually talked about her as one of his old friends that he has long since met. She is also mentioned in Ningguang's voice line, and if you own Xianyun, she is also mentioned by her name. Both Ningguang and Xianyun's voice lines are locked, however, and considering the next update is going to be the annual Lantern Rite, I'm going to assume that she is going to be a part of Lantern Rite's story. In any case, the mention of the White Horse Adeptus was already teased in the game since 1.0, more specifically in the book called Moonlit Bamboo Forest, and then a continuation called Springs of Hidden Jade in 5.2, which also both related to the three moon goddesses. So, in today's video, we're going to talk about Zibai by timeline accuracy, at least what I think is timeline accurate from my understanding, what we knew about her, and we can theorize along the way. As always, don't forget to give this video a like and comment so the channel can be noticed by the algorithm. My name is Nicole, and I make lore and commentary videos on this channel to keep you company. Durin is finally here. He is easily one of the most anticipated characters in the game because he has always been teased since 1.0 and also has strong combat capability. I personally am pulling for him myself, and if you need extra promo gems to pull for him, then allow me to introduce you to Loot Bar. Loot Bar is a reliable site for fast, secure, and super reliable top-up experience for a Genesis Crystal. Additionally, they provide 25% discounts compared to normal prices in-game and supports consoles as well. During the period, you can also purchase the limited $100 package with special discount that lasts for 1 week and also Durin's guaranteed bundle. Once you start your top-up, they will only ask for your UID, nothing else, so your privacy is guaranteed and your items will arrive to your account in less than 2 minutes. If you like Melee Astro Wonderland, you can also top up Kernel Nexus Loot Bar the same way as you do it with Genesis Crystals. Over 30,000 Trustpilot reviews are showing their satisfaction after using Loot Bar, and if you have any problem with your transaction, their customer service is always available if you need assistance. Other than Genshin Impact, Loot Bar is also available for other games as well, such as Honkai Star Rail, Wuthering Waves, Zenless Zone Zero, etc. Click the link in the description below and register to get an additional 10% coupon that can be combined with all of the discounts and receive special discounts for returning customers. Now let's continue with the content. Now, Zibai's lore is actually a lot more in-depth than most of us know. In fact, aside from in-book readables and interactions, she was verbally mentioned by some of the playable characters in the last Lantern Rite by the name of Gold-Eyed Saladin Mare. Of course, we'll get to that in a bit, but for today's video, I'll give you what we knew about her from the very beginning, and it all came from the Hyperborean era. We'll start with the Springs of Hidden Jade, which is basically a story written as Guhua's memory when he was younger. According to the book, Zibai is implied to be an emissary of the Kingdom of the Ocean Depths, which of course not only meant that she is an angel, but could heavily imply that she is either from Vermuvia or Hyperborea. However, it's very unlikely for it to be Vermuvia because the kingdom was established after the funerary year ended and in fact was created by a Sumeri god who refused to yield under Deshret's ruling. With that said, it's very likely that it's referring to Hyperborea, or at least what Hyperborea is now, because in the Ballad of the Fjords, it is implied that Hyperborea sank after the celestial nail was casted, which matches with the book's description. Zibai is also said to be the daughter of Time, which could imply her to be Istaroth's daughter. That in itself is very unlikely to be literal, and she could be like Venti, who is a part of Istaroth as Thread of the Thousand Winds, which is what Istaroth is known for to the people of Old Mondstadt and Enkanomians, or what people of that time referred to as Delphi Fito. The last part is just a small little theory because Delphi Fito is not only mentioned in the Luna 3 Archon quest, but is also translated as Serpent's Heart, which matches with Enkanomia's lore where they worshipped a god prior to Orobashi that is also a serpent named Ouroboros alongside Istaroth. In any case, this mother could also refer to one of the three moon goddesses as she implied to be an envoy of the moon according to Lama, and I theorize in this channel that the three moon goddesses is the source of power to create the four shades. We can talk about that in another video though, but for the sake of this video, we'll just refer to Zibai as an angel and a daughter of Istaroth for now because that's what she is implied to be in the books anyway. Plus, she's also holding a seemingly golden crown, something that also described an angel where they have crowns to signify that they're an angel in the finale of the Deep Galleries. So alongside Nicole, Zibai is an angel that guided the people of Hyperborea, at least referred in the book to be that way. Champions and heroes alike would come to her to receive her blessings, and as an angel, she'll of course give them. Unfortunately, after Koitak and Seotek's Foinen's rebellion towards the heavenly principles and the war during the funerary year, the celestial nails were casted and the angels were cursed to become a silly if they ever fell in love with anyone. Since Zibai is implied to be an angel that resides within the moon, she fell into Teyvat and wandered off in Liyue. Since then, she is waiting for her mother's thousand threats to get her and the erosion to affect her. With that in mind, this could also be the same time when the solar chariot fell into Teyvat and crashed into the chasm. Now, the lore of the solar chariot is not really clear, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but it is implied that the three moons have castles. This was also mentioned in Innova's signature weapon as well. So it's possible that the angels, aside from them being the envoys of the heavenly principles for the humans in Teyvat, also reside in the three moon goddesses' palaces as well. It matches with Nabu Balikata, who has strong connection with the three moon goddesses in Sumeru's lore, as she danced in the three moon goddesses' castles. We can talk about her in another video, as I have another video material on her, King Dashret and the Torre. It kind of makes my theory on the shades and the angels were created using the power of the three moon goddesses a lot more plausible, don't you think? Anyways, from that day on, she often galloped the sky and sprinted along the threads of the Stellar Fortunes in the sky, concealing her trails from the gods within the bamboo forest and springs, and guarding the ancient stories with her. Now, the book refers to Stellar Fortunes as Fate, and we've recently learned in Turin's story quest that his fate is not tied within Teyvat, let alone written within the stars. So possibly just like the witches in the Hexen Circle, Zibai knew that the sky is false, which shouldn't be a question to begin with, and knew very well that the fate of humanity is tied within the false sky. Side note for a moment, apparently Durin is stated to be very lucky as per Barbeloth, which makes sense when you think about it, because even though he is a son of Anders' daughter, who is a Teyvat local, he himself is not from Teyvat. So when Barbeloth say that Anders' daughter is an amazing witch, well, I have to agree on that. Also, I cried a lot during Durin's Day 5 story. I actually wrote this video script a few days before Zibai's trip happened, which also at the same time when this video was uploaded. That said, I have more things to add while editing, and thankfully her drip marketing further clarifies my thoughts on her. Now, I mentioned Istaroth earlier. The main reason why she was mentioned in Zibai's drip marketing is because of what I just told you earlier, because Zibai is part of her, or at least what the book refers to as Zibai's mother. Again, I don't think it's literal, but in any case, Zibai was mentioned in the book to keep the ancient stories that slipped from her, which is connected to Istaroth asking Zibai why she kept all those stories in her instead of letting it to be forgotten. Remember, in Genshin, there is a thing called erosion, where this particular phenomena is part of Istaroth's power, where things will eventually be forgotten by time. This also affects living beings, where they'll slowly experience memory loss and likely experience rage. The more powerful someone is, the likelier they'll get out of control. This is interesting to me because even though Zibai awaits for erosion to get her, it seems it's one of those things where she holds the principles of forgive but never forget type of situation. This could explain why her moon wheel is Geo, because characters with this element are known to persevere despite hardships. It also makes her story in Moonlit Bamboo Forest hold a lot more credibility, because a version of the Three Moon Goddesses is not too far off with the finale of the Deep Galleries. I wouldn't be surprised if her voice line include Istaroth and the Three Moon Goddesses, and possibly even Nicole, because both of them are angels. Alright, that is the origin of Zibai. As to what she did after she fell in Teyvat, she became an adeptus for the people of Liyue. To an extent at least. Whether she made a contract with Zhongli or not, it's quite possible because he is the leader of the Adepti, or also known with his title as the Prime of Adeptus. However, not all Adeptus made a contract with Zhongli, with Yanfei as the perfect example of that. Zhongli also states that he has not seen Zibai in a very long time, possibly after the War of the Archon War, because she was implied to help Rex Lapis, Zhongli's Archon name by the way, to seal an ancient god named Tao Taudo, which I'll talk about in a second. And contradictory to her name, it is implied that she herself is not classified under the Adeptus as per the Last Lantern Rite, and Moonlit Bamboo Forest also implied that to be the case. Even though her drip marketing also states that she is the White Horse Adeptus, it also said from Liyue's legends, which meant that even the title Adeptus is just what people nowadays refer her as. Speaking of that, this is where we enter the next part of her story. So we learned in the Last Lantern Rite that there used to be a god named Taudo, or also known as Bune by poetic name, who guards the realm of death. During the Arkan War, however, Taudo got dragged into it and as a result, disturbing the realm of life and death. This of course is seen as a huge threat to all Liyue, and in order to stop this disaster once and for all, 8 individuals band together in order to purify Taudo once and for all. They are soon known as the 8 Adepts, and despite their names, none of them are Adeptus. 3 of them, however, are implied to be not humans, and they are called the 3 Beasts of Taudo, or 3 Immortals of Taudo. The members are Lone Butterfly of the Crimson Flame, not Signora, Jade Plume Silver Wing, and Gold-Eyed Celadon Mare, who soon became known as the White Horse Adeptus in modern Liyue, or for us, it's Zibai. During the purification, the lone butterfly of Crimson Flame sacrificed herself while the other 7 members remained alive. This resulted in the butterfly to be completely erased from the ley lines, resulting in her death in the process. Since then, Jade-plumed Silverwing went wandering together with one of the adepts by the name of Wind Reader, while Zibai went on to seclusion. Jade-plumed Silverwing is also the main inspiration of Lanyan's hairpin, and it is said that Chimen arts, a practice that is still used by Lanyan and her clan today, came from both Wind Reader and Jade-plumed Silverwing. Now, why am I telling you this if it has little connection with Zibai? In fact, Zibai, as Gold-Eyed Celadon Mare of course, was barely mentioned in that event. Well, this is where I want to propose a theory. So we learned that these 3 are not humans, and not only that, they can take shape into humans. So, what if, just like Zibai, the other 2 are also angels? One thing I find interesting here is that 2 of them are likely connected to the Shades. Butterfly is likely connected to Renova because she sacrificed herself in the end, something that is always a theme with Renova if a strong power is being drawn, while Zibai is connected to Istaroth because she is implied to be that way in the Springs of Hidden Jade, and her tendencies to keep ancient stories with her instead of them being forgotten, something that is, let's just say, against Istaroth's power. With that being the case, Silverwing is likely related to Nibirius because the Chimen arts also played a part in Lantern Rite, where Lanyan Spartan connected all of the 8 gates to perform the ceremony, and also became the vessel to absorb all of the fetter that caused the accelerating death in that event. In short, all of these entities were connected to something that is related to the Shades, so with that in mind, it's no surprise if all of them are angels. Unfortunately, however, Jade-plumed Silverwing went wandering with the Wind Reader, so it's possible that the 2 became a couple. That being said, it's very unlikely that we'll ever get to see her playable, let alone in a human form, because at that point of time, it's very likely that the curse caught up on her and turned her into a Seelie. This leaves Zibai on her own, and if my theory on the Shades use the power of the moons remain consistent, then Lone Butterfly of Crimson Flame, still not Signora, reside at the Iridescent Moon's Palace, Jade-plumed Silverwing reside at the Eternal Moon's Palace, while Zibai reside at the Frost Moon's Palace. We're going on a side tangent a bit, but it matches with what we just experienced in Luna 3 Archon Quest, where Columbina jumped into the Moon Gates, and unlike everyone else who got frozen in time by the Torre, logically speaking, only the Traveler and Dottore can move at that time. Columbina, however, can move, so she likely has the power to control time as well, and it could also be the reason why time in Tevat runs differently than the Abyss, especially that the Frost Moon's real moon is still intact beyond the fall sky. In the hymns of the far north, it is implied that there are 4 moons in the sky, which should be not the case to begin with because there has always been 3 to begin with. Notcry is said to be that 4th moon, or at least implied to be the remnants of the moon that failed to materialize. The iridescent moon, likely theorized to be Sonnet, states that Columbina's name as Hypo, which is a name that should not exist in her time because that name is actually newly established, or in other words, quite recent. Again, another time discrepancy. Gameplay-wise, this matches with her being in the same banner and update as Columbina, don't you think? Since 5.x, what we experience in Liyue's Lantern Rite is connected to what is happening in that update's Archon quest. Until now, it is believed that what happened in Liyue's 2025 Lantern Rite is related to what happened with Natlan's Night Kingdom, which, if you remember, got altered by Capitano because of his deal with Renova. So, if Columbina did travel back in time, then this could explain her connections with Istaroth, Sonnet's knowledge of knowing Columbina's full name, and finally, Zibai's connection with the Frost Moon and Columbina. Now, this particular theory was inspired by cats, and frankly, I have my own version where it is also related to Napo Balikata and Ashred, so we can talk about this more in another video which I will post very soon. Alright, that's enough side tangent. Moving on to what we know about Zibai, it is stated that Moonlit Bamboo Forest is indeed based on a real-life story that happened in Liyue's history. Based on Springs of Hidden Jade, it is implied that she did meet the boy in the Moonlit Bamboo Forest, and the meeting happened before she met Guhua. With that in mind, it's possible that her meeting with this boy and Guhua is around 1000 to 2000 years ago, and should be after the Archon War was concluded. I say this because visions are the fragments of the 7 Archons, and it is said in the game's lore that visions are the first step in order for one to be ascended as a god. Since Guhua ascended and Zibai already lived in seclusion, Guhua should have existed after the war, hence why I say Zibai's meeting with the boy and Guhua is likely around that time. In any case, this book and a volume in Records of Jueyun is the most prominent early introduction to what we know about the 3 moon goddesses. In fact, this book further supports that she is indeed connected to Istaroth because at the end of Moonlit Bamboo Forest, she can already see the boy's fate, where he will explore the world and will end in Qingse village in his old age. I personally recommend you to read that book, but if you want a more visual lore explanation, I highly recommend you to watch the Moonlit Bamboo Forest fan animated video at Hoyofair's channel. Now, I won't go into detail what she said in that book because I talked about it in my recent video already, but I would say that everything we know about the moon goddesses are likely not yet complete. One thing that I always find weird is how Notcry, until now, still doesn't mention the Solar Chariot, Silver Carriage, and the Lunar Palace, given of course Notcry is not yet complete. I am positive that we might learn more about these 3 things in the next Archon quest. Well, maybe, who knows. Also, while I don't think Zibai will be involved in the next Archon quest, I believe the next Lantern Rite will explain what these things are. With that said, I want to enter a bit of a theory and speculation side of the video where we can talk a bit on what we can expect in the next Lantern Rite. So the next Lantern Rite will no doubt talk about the moons. Whether it will talk about the moon goddesses or not, it's possible, but I also find the case to be a bit unlikely. Even though the last Lantern Rite should have been an interlude Archon quest instead of an event quest, it's not that lore relevant for the most part anyway, and it's more so related to Hu Tao than anyone else. In fact, they never go back to what Ningguang meant about their predicament at that time being related to Natlan, so there's that. However, there are certain things that we might learn about in the next Lantern Rite. First of all, Zhongli. It's possible that we will learn more about his background because until today, he doesn't really have a clear backstory, well, at least a bit clearer than Raiden's sisters, that's for sure. All we know is that he is older than any Archons in the game and he was born 6,000 years prior to the game's events, near the time when the Funerary Year happened or already concluded. There are hints that Zhongli is the true Geo-Dragon Sovereign but turned into an Archon, which I can definitely see that being the case because he has a serpent-like dragon in his Archon form during Liyue's Archon quest. 2024 Lantern Rite also support this as well, where Zhongli avoided Neuvillette appearance in Chenyu Vale, but whether it meant that he is scared of Neuvillette or not is unclear because it can clearly meant that he is ashamed of him. Of course, that's just speaking out loud here, and whether that's true or not remains unclear, and it's very likely to be false anyway because Neuvillette did say that Zhongli must be put on trial regardless because he claimed the authority of Geo. That being said, however, I want to put a bet here. If Zhongli can use Kuvaki, which I assume Zibai can because she wields a moon wheel, then Zhongli's possibility of being the actual Geo-Dragon Sovereign becomes more plausible. Here's the thing, Visually, Neuvillette can wield Kuvaki because of his Triquetra symbol that is the same as the playable non-cry casts. Of course not entirely, but it is there, that's for sure. Besides, Zhongli's pillar still uncannily looks the same as the pillar in Hisi Island, so for him being able to wield Kuvaki or at least know a thing or two about the history of the dragons is possible. However, something else could also be possible here, and that is the Solar Chariot. We learned that Zibai and Zhongli are friends. Don't worry, I confirmed it in Korean that he is implied to be friends with her because he said 친구, which meant friends, and even implied that it's been so long since the two even met. Whether it meant literally or not, it's possible that this long time is at least during the Archon War where Zibai and the other 8 adepts were sealing Taudo. Zibai was said to have lived in seclusion after the Taudo incident anyway. But in any case, Zhongli's connection with the Solar Chariot could be that he might have been born from the moment the Solar Chariot fell. Of course, this is speaking out of the ordinary here, but I say this is because of his arrival is close to when the chariot fell. So if he could indeed wield Kuvaki, then it could be him being related to the Solar Chariot. Now the reason I even mention this here is because of the Solar Chariot that has 2 versions of the story. First, it is implied that to have fallen when the moon goddesses perished and awakened during the Archon War. Unable to witness the bloodshed happening, it then returned back to the sky. However, in the Vermilion Hereafter artifact set, it is said that the Solar Chariot was fixed by the people at that time. It is likely that the two are similar in each other where it ascended back when the Archon War happened. That being said, I would say that the Solar Chariot is very unlikely to be just an ordinary object because a chariot needs a driver to actually function. Besides, the chariot is also said to be a star instead of an actual chariot, and the name of the last US Archon quest is called A New Star Approaches, which could likely refer to Zhongli, who is revealed to be Rex Lapis, and also indeed enter a new era of him becoming a human, quote-unquote, instead of wanting to work as an Archon. In any case, I doubt this theory holds true anyway, and I find it weird if he is a driver of the Solar Chariot because, I mean, what does that make Zibai then? But whether Zhongli is the true sovereign or not, it still hangs in the balance because Neuvillette's statement about Zhongli is very negative and doesn't seem to acknowledge him as a dragon either. But again, we'll have to wait and see. Now, I mentioned Zibai's moon wheel earlier, and I find it to be unique because instead of it being silver, her moon wheel is actually bronze. I find this interesting because Nicole, who is also an angel, is quite similar to her because her vision has a unique casing that doesn't look like anything we see from Tevat. That said, it's possible that Zibai's moon wheel is special because it came directly from the moon goddesses. Some say that her moon wheel might be fake, just like how it is with Venti and Zhongli, but I find that to be very unlikely. Remember, as an angel, Zibai lived during the Hyperborean era. The reason she is able to maintain her form is because she didn't have anyone that she fell in love with, and she also has no long-term duty that she needs to worry about. In fact, she lived in seclusion, and if you read her story in Moonlit Pabu Forest, she is more like a Silly where she guides people to the exit. But regardless about her moon wheel, it's possible that she got it directly from the moon goddesses because she lived in that era. It might explain her bronze casing because unlike other characters where its casing has 4 spikes, Zibai doesn't seem to show any of that. Or if you think that her moon wheel is Liyue's casing, well, you can't really use that argument either because Innova got hers from Natlan while Nefer got hers from Thought, which both have the same casing, just different color. With that said, Zibai's moon wheel is very likely to be the original, if that makes sense, because unlike others who got it in a more mysterious way or in more recent times, Zibai's moon wheel is actually given directly. At least that's what I like to assume, but that's as far as I can give you for now because moon wheel's origin is still very mysterious after all. Personally, I think her design is really pretty, and the fact we finally get to meet her is really exciting. I really love the White Horse Adeptus, by the way, because it is what I can say to be the OG story of the 3 moon goddesses, if that makes sense, you know? If you ask me, I didn't expect her to be playable from the very beginning, but alas, here we are. I personally am pulling for her and Columbina myself, and what do you think of Zibai? Let me know in the comments down below. Sana!